Welcome back to the Simplify Senior Transitions podcast. Today, we're diving into a topic that far too many families avoid until it's too late: hospice care. There are so many misconceptions and unanswered questions around what hospice actually is and when it's appropriate and how it can support not just the person receiving care, but the entire family. Joining me is Heather Rosnow, a seasoned client relations executive with Pathways Home Health and Hospice. With decades of experience across the senior care space, Heather is deeply passionate about educating families and building strong professional communities around care. We're going to talk about the truth beyond hospice, the power of early education, how it differs from palliative care, and what signs to watch for when it's time to have the conversation. Let's jump in.
Welcome to the Simplify Senior Transitions podcast, where we help families navigate senior living, real estate, and everything in between. Hosted by Senior Transition Specialist Dale Corpus, this show brings you expert insights, real solutions, and stress-free strategies to make senior transitions simple. Ready to dive in? Let's go.
Okay, we're jumping right back into the show. Heather, welcome. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Dale. And thanks for including me in this topic.
Absolutely. You're the first person that I'm bringing on to talk about hospice, and I've been trying to find somebody, to talk about this topic because I think it's so important. So I'm very excited to have you join us to cover this subject. Can you tell us a bit about your journey in senior care and what drew you to the world of hospice and home health?
Well, my background is I have a degree in music therapy. So I was a music therapist for quite a while. And then I somehow transitioned into pharmaceutical sales. And I was in pharmaceutical sales for quite a while. And I kept getting calls and calls from recruiters about hospice, which I knew nothing about. So I was since I had so many calls, I thought, well, let me just hear it out. And then when they talked about it, I thought, well, this is interesting. I think I have a lot with my personal background to be able to do this and help other families and other people through this really difficult journey.
Right. And what does your role as a client relations executive at Pathways involve?
Well, the sole reason that I took this position at Pathways is we are allowed to meet with the families and discuss Pathways and also, more importantly, what hospice is and what it isn't. I'm usually their first contact with Pathways, hospice. And then I get to know them. We discuss the pros and there really aren't many cons. However, we discuss what hospice is, what it isn't, and I begin more as a non-clinical to explain what we can do for them and their family.
Can I already just jump into the topic of what is hospice? I mean, some people listening to this don't fully understand what hospice really entails. Can we talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. I think it's very important. The H word is like a lot of people feel is the C word. So hospice, the whole goal of hospice is comfort care. Our goal is to keep a person comfortable. Hospice comes in when the person who has a terminal illness, stops treatment or no longer wants to go to the hospital, doesn't want to go to the doctor's office, and just is looking for care. And if they're suffering from pain, our goal is to keep you comfortable and pain-free.
How did your earlier work as a hospice liaison and marketer shape your perspective on today's senior care landscape?
Well, back then it was very different. I could sign consents with the families. We had a lot more that a liaison, it's just very similar to a CRE. It's just a different title, and each company has a different name for their, marketing executive. So, and I really like this one because it's community relations. My goal is to educate the
Okay.
community and to let them know what we have to offer them.
Got it. What's the biggest misconception you hear from families about hospice care?
That we're not willing to give up, that I'm not dying
Hmm.
tomorrow. You know, they're very concerned about that. We're not there yet. You know, we're still, we want our family member, or I want myself to be comfortable. I'm going to die tomorrow. And that's the largest misconception. It all starts even with the physicians. They don't like to, they have a hard time placing their patients on
Hmm.
hospice. Their goal is to keep you alive. And at some point, there's nothing more they can
Hmm.
do. And or what they're trying to do is causing so much pain and
Hmm.
discomfort that the person at the other end doesn't want to
Hmm.
continue.
Got it. Now, you just mentioned that, people associate hospice with giving up. How do you respond to that belief?
You know, I truly believe it is not about giving up. I've dealt
Mhm.
with families. I've dealt personally with the situation with my father and things that my family felt that,
Mhm.
you know what, you're just giving up. You don't want mo- any you want dad not to
Okay.
be around anymore. And I say no, it's absolutely just the opposite. And then I go into talking about how with hospice, every hospice has the same
Okay.
skeleton. It's just quote unquote the meat on their bones that kind of makes
Okay.
them different. We I always tell them that we're going to come to
Mm.
you. We're available 24/7. We have an RN case manager that oversees the care, who has direct contact to the
Mm.
physician. And we have many different physicians on with
Mhm.
hospice and with pathways. We have a social worker that will be there not only to help the
Mhm.
client, patient, but also the entire
Mhm.
family. We make sure everything is in order. So whatever, meaning, you you have plans set up for when the transition actually
Mhm.
happens. When so you don't have to worry about those type of things as you begin
Okay.
to change. And we are there also to provide home
Mhm.
health care. We have a home health aide that will come, make sure you are clean, that you're not developing. Our whole goal is that you continue to be who you are at this point in time. We want you to feel comfortable in your mind, in your body, and your
Mhm.
spirit. And on top of everything, we have volunteers. So I basically, that's how we kind of start the
Okay.
conversation usually. We then move on to, well, what if
Yeah.
something happens? And hospice is available
Mhm.
24/7, is something people really don't
Okay.
fully understand. You call us, you get triage like you do when you call
Mhm.
911. They pass you on to an RN in this
Mhm.
area. And then they say, try this. And then they check on you, or they say, we're coming out
Okay.
right now. What I forgot to say is you also get what's called a
Okay.
comfort kit. And that's just also there for when you may need it. In the comfort kit are different types of medication, and that can help someone relax, or if they're having pain, help hopefully to cause less
Mhm.
pain. And in no way does hospice try to hinder the
Mhm.
situation. We are there to let nature take its course, but while nature is taking course, that you are extremely
Got it.
comfortable.
Now, you defined earlier on what hospice is. I have a related question. What's the difference between palliative care and hospice?
Well, regarding your diagnosis, for example, um, let's say you have
Okay.
cancer and you are getting treatment for your cancer. You can be on
Mm-hmm.
palliative care. With palliative care, you have the same options. You have a nurse, you you have a social worker, you have a home health aide that come out. They don't come out a lot with
Okay.
palliative care. They're not there as often as hospice is, and you're still doing curative treatment.
Okay.
Okay? You're still going on, let you know, there's still options for you as far as possibly chemo or, you know, everything is going extremely
Mm-hmm.
well. And you're still on, you know, curative treatments. And that's where you can use palliative care.
Okay.
Now, with hospice, it's when you're deciding, you know what, I can't I can't do this anymore. I don't want to continue. I feel very or in this is not every situation. You know, a lot of people now survive on
Mm-hmm.
with cancer. This is only for those that they're not doing well with their
Mm-hmm.
diagnosis. Okay. So they decide, I no longer want to go to the doctor. It's too difficult for me to get
Mm-hmm.
up. It's too difficult for me to continue with this type of medication that
Mm-hmm.
I'm on for curative
Mm-hmm.
treatment. And I just, I want to stop. And for whatever time I have
Mm-hmm.
left, I truly just want to be with my family, be with those that I love, however that is. Actually, even to just go out and do anything you want to do. It's not when you're in hospice, it doesn't mean you're stuck in
Mm-hmm.
staying at home. And anyway, we have many patients on hospice that go on
Okay.
trips, that go out for lunch, go to the theater, you know, at different times. Everybody's trajectory with their illness is
Mm-hmm.
different. And that's how we make it. Um, our goal is to keep you
Okay.
comfortable. And let's say you do go on a trip. We work with another hospice to wherever you're going and let them know that this person is coming here. Will you help us if they need something? You still pick up the phone and call
Yeah.
Pathways, but maybe the hospice that would come out if you need something would be from a different
Okay.
company if we're not in that
Um,
area.
and then for those listening, I know, Heather, you're based in the Bay Area. For Pathways, geographically, what areas do you cover?
We cover Santa Clara County, San Mateo County, San Francisco, and I work in Alameda County,
Perfect.
most of
Okay,
Alameda
got it.
County.
Now, can someone receive hospice care while still receiving active treatments?
No, not that. Well, if it's okay, that would be palliative care if it's pertaining to whatever their diagnosis is
Mm-hmm.
on hospice. However, um, let's say for example, we have a patient that has
Okay.
Alzheimer's. Okay. And all of a sudden they're developing some cardiac
Mm-hmm.
issues where they need a pacemaker. If we don't provide that, and that's not related to their diagnosis of Alzheimer's, has nothing to do with their heart, you can still get that
Mm.
repaired. And our goal is to keep you comfortable. And if that's not going to keep you comfortable, you can't, that's not our protocol.
Got it.
So if you have a secondary illness not related to the illness that has placed you on the service, you can still get help with that. You still actually can be in communication with your own physician that you've had for many years. We ask the physician, would they like to follow? And sometimes they say absolutely, or sometimes they say, let's have the hospice continue on this journey with the
Okay.
family.
Got it.
Okay. Yeah.
I want to segue into when and how to start the conversation about the H word. So, when should families start thinking about hospice as an option?
One thing families don't understand is that hospice, a lot of times, can really
Mm.
help them and the family. Sometimes it just takes, you're dealing with your
Mhm.
illness. And like I said, you no longer want to go to the hospital. You would rather have people come to you. Um, you're no longer going to be getting curative treatment for whatever the diagnosis is. When you begin to feel that way, usually you'll be telling your physician, hey, I'm thinking about this. And they usually to stop treatment. And you're usually on palliative care. And when you're on palliative care, they will also let you know, well, maybe you should consider this option, hospice. However, just as you can, the family and the patient are in charge of the care. Hospice gives suggestions, doesn't mean you have to follow them. We give suggestions. And let's say you sign on to hospice and all of a sudden you go, you know what? I don't want to do this. I want to be able to go to the
Mhm.
ER. You just sign a document. You can revoke our service and you can get aggressive
Yeah.
treatment again. So when people realize you're not, quote unquote, signing your life
Mhm.
away, you're in charge of everything and you can leave it if you want. And then say you leave and then you want to come back on, you can. If something is going on and there's this new type of a
Mhm.
treatment, you want to try it. No one is saying you can't. If they will allow you to try this treatment, the other physicians, the oncologist or
Yeah.
whatever it is, and they'll put you in they say you can do this. Let's see what happens. You sign off of hospice and hopefully we don't
Yeah.
see you, you know? However, if it's not working, you can come back on. And the whole point of beginning this process earlier than later is to build a rapport and a trust of your nurses, of your social worker, your home health aide. We are there to answer everybody's questions. We also have a non-denominational spiritual care that I forgot to mention. And it's just you have more people surrounding to make sure that we are meeting the needs of yourself or your family
Mhm.
member. And so the sooner you are able to qualify, um, and you are thinking of that
Yep.
area, heading down that track, you should begin to discuss it.
Got it.
And many times, not a lot, but with dementias, especially when someone is very, has severe dementia and they begin to have different things going on, like they're
Yeah.
losing weight, they need complete help with dressing, they can't speak as many words in a sentence together. Whatever is going on, if they meet Medicare
Mhm.
guidelines, that's the key. Well, you can't just say, I want to be
Mhm.
on hospice. You may not
Mhm.
qualify. And if you get on the service, when we start caring for you, you may begin to start
Mm.
eating again, or you're gaining weight, or things are changing. Parts of things are changing, and you no longer qualify. And if that happens, you graduate from
Mhm.
hospice. And if anything changes at any point, you can come back on where you'll be able to you follow the Medicare guidelines and you would qualify again. So you need first a doctor's order. A doctor has to write
Mhm.
an order so you can just begin the
Mhm.
process.
Now, What are some red flags that indicate a family is waiting too long to make the transition?
Well, that's kind of a tricky um, question. Everybody has the right to do what is going on. However, if this person is in excruciating pain, if this person needs to get that in
Yeah.
control, not everybody has pain, but if that's one of their what's going on, they are voicing, the family wants to keep this person going, going, going. And the caretakers have to at some point say, who am I
Hmm.
doing this for? Am I doing this for
Hmm.
me? What about my family member? Is this what they would want? Or if they're voicing, I don't want this anymore, it's hard, it's your loved one, but to respect what they actually want is usually a time to begin the discussion. Just because you talk
Hmm.
about it or you have someone come over to let you know, you just kind of evaluate, oh, this, so and so would qualify. And this is what we can do. And this is what it is and what it isn't. That's what we discuss first. We could
Yeah.
begin care. However, sometimes families say we're
Yeah.
not ready yet. And then we go, well, when you're ready, we're here for you.
Okay.
And it's hard. It's hard to realize that sometimes we have to let go. And I've lived it personally, and it is extremely hard. However, just because someone goes on hospice does not mean it's happening within a
Hmm.
few days. The longer you're able to build this rapport, we've had patients on for
Wow.
3 years. We've had patients who still qualify. We have patients who have been with hospice, for 9 months. But then we also have those that are only there for days and a few, and that's where they have no idea that, they, a lot of times, not every time, they think we should have been doing this sooner. We, you know, with hospice, we are there. We are able to get whatever type of equipment you need very quickly, usually within 4 to 6 hours. We are able to provide medications. You get a comfort kit ahead of time. We can say, try this or try that. Now, and then again, we make these suggestions, and you don't have to do it. However, we encourage you to try this, and then the person may be more comfortable, and you'll notice it. They'll say to you, they'll verbalize it, or if they can't speak for themselves, you can see on their facial reactions that they're in the way they're
Mhm.
breathing, that they're calmer.
Got it. Let's talk about the hospice experience. What families can expect. Can you walk us through what a typical hospice setup looks like at home?
Yes. You know what? The typical one is once we
Mhm.
discuss it with you and our services, and you agree to utilize our services, we have already, usually we get the doctor's order if we don't have one. Once we receive the doctor's order, we set up a time where our nurse would come out and, you know, begin the process. When you begin the process, you have to sign consents to allow us to care for you. And once again, I want to reiterate, however, you are in control of
Mhm.
everything we do. If you're doing this and you say, okay, we're not ready, that's
Mhm.
fine too. However, let's say you agree. We we assess your
Mhm.
home. We discuss what type of equipment you
Mhm.
may need. You may need a hospital bed, a bedside
Mhm.
commode. You may need an overhead table. It's basically like things you have in the
Yeah.
hospital if you're coming from there. You need supplies. So we have supplies, personal care supplies that we provide, and a comfort kit. And as things progress, if you need a suction, we get you a suction. So if you're having a hard time and you have secretions, or whatever is going on, we get the equipment that you need to make you feel comfortable. When you first sign on to hospice, I'm not going to lie, you all of a sudden I always warn families, you're going to be getting a lot of phone calls, and you're going to be getting a lot of people calling to set up a time to come over. And you just need to be aware. It'll be for the first maybe 1 or 2 days. And like the social worker has to come out and visit the family within 5 days of signing on to the service. So you have a call from the social worker. You have the nurse who's going to be coming over. You have the home health aide where we schedule the best time to provide the care for that. And they'll see if you would like spiritual care. And I always encourage people to have the spiritual care. It's just having someone else there. People coming into your home. We don't come all the time. And every time we're there, it's usually for about an hour. We always call, at least with our company, we call ahead of time and say, whoever the person is, in charge, is it okay if we come over tomorrow around noon and the nurse will come and visit? And then you can say, oh, you know what? Noon won't work. Is it possible you come at 2 and then we work around your schedule? Or, I don't want anybody to come today. Then we call them another day and we schedule for another day. So there's a lot that goes on. You have the equipment delivered. We need to make sure someone's at the house to be there to accept the equipment. You're getting a hospital bed. We need to make sure there's space for that to be in the home. A lot of times it's moving furniture around. Or where would you like to be? Do you want to be in the family room? Do you want to be in your bedroom? And so we work out logistics of that. Then if you're already at home, we would have our nurse coming around the same time as the equipment. So we can immediately begin the process. If you're at the hospital, which happens a lot, we work to make sure the equipment has arrived prior to you being placed, coming and meeting the nurse and signing on to our service. You don't have to have a hospital bed. A lot of people stay in their own beds. People think it's going to be like we have people who come onto service. They don't need a hospital bed. They don't need a bedside commode. They don't need this and they don't need that. We won't provide any equipment at this time. However, if things change along the line and you need something, we get it for you.
Okay. Yeah, it sounds like there are a lot of players involved, a lot of moving parts with this care team, and helping somebody receiving hospice care. You already mentioned a ton of support that hospice provides for family members and caregivers. Is there anything else that's provided, or did you already encompass everything of the services?
Well, that's where the meat on the bones kind of changes. But one thing I want to go back and say, it sounds overwhelming, but it's what happens is your team works together. You're not involved in everything. Every 2 weeks we meet and they have a meeting regarding the care of the patients on our service. So everybody our social worker will communicate with the spiritual care with our RN if they notice things, especially our home health aide can do that. And then it's by the side. And if you have a concern or a question, you just call one number and it's a 24-hour number and you get in touch with our office. As far as things that are a little different, we have a huge volunteer pool. We have people, let's say this person really loves pets. We have volunteers who have the cutest dogs, or sometimes we even have people who have cats and they've come over. Everybody is screened ahead of time. You can't just say, I want to volunteer. You go through training yourself. Or you have people who really enjoy being read to, or they want a companion to go out
Okay.
for walks. We are able to do that. I, as I said, have a degree
Yeah.
in music therapy. It just works out that a lot of times as I'm talking to the family, I ask what their interests are. What did they do for a living? You want to get to know them. They're not just a person
Yeah.
on our service. We want to cater to them. If they greatly enjoy music and singing or different types and styles, I will just jump right on in and I will work with the patient and the family to
Nice.
sing to them, to do songs that they want. Um, for example, I've had patients who I would come and visit when they're in assisted
Okay.
living, spend 10 minutes with them, and I'd sing whatever, and then they love it. And then from that point on, I'll come every time I see them or I enter that
Yeah.
community, whether I'm singing, you know, a form of like
Yeah.
standard Gershwin, or if I'm doing an Italian
Love it.
aria. So that's something that's I'm able to do just
Yeah.
hands-on.
Um,
Yeah.
so you talked about a community and whatnot. So I want to double check. Is hospice only available in the home or can it be provided in the facility as well?
Really, you can have
Yeah.
hospice happens
Okay. Got
wherever
it.
your home is. Let's say you're in an
Yeah.
assisted living. We provide the hospice there. So what we do is even though you have a team that helps you with everything, as far as your medications in the assisted living and home health aides, we work in conjunction with them. So if they notice a change, they call us. Our nurse and our social workers and whoever come to visit will be in constant communication and say, we need to change. We'd like to change this with Mrs. So-and-so or Mr. whoever. And then we work together to do that change and they provide the change in medication.
Okay.
Or you also can be in a skilled
Okay.
nursing and have hospice care. It's just more eyes on the person who is needing our care. And our goal is to make sure they're comfortable. I've had patients that were in a skilled nursing and the guy was like, he loved the
Yeah.
A's. So I made it work out that we
Oh,
went to an
nice.
A's game. So it's not just it's about living your
Yeah.
best life while you're on our service.
Yeah. Um, what kind of emotional toll does waiting too long for hospice take on the family?
I wish I would have done this sooner because when you're a caretaker or you're watching your loved ones suffer and
Mm-hmm.
change, you are dealing with so much and you usually don't get the support
Mm-hmm.
you need. We work very closely to help support you and the entire and your
Yeah.
loved one. We talk with the caregivers. We guide them in the right direction if they need to get some, more support and guide them to support groups if we can't be there at all the times. Let's say we have a family where, you know what, if you want, you can take 5 days and go
Yeah.
away and we will find a place for your loved one to be. And hospice covers that. And you can go and do that. Or you're thinking, oh my God, I want to go to this wedding so bad, but who's going to take care of my loved one? We're able to help you guide that and do that. And, we work a lot with home care agencies too. Usually sometimes they already have caregivers and then at their home or they've used them before when they're in the hospital, when they come out, and we work with them too. We work with everybody involved. We make sure that, wow, would you like to take a walk today? To whoever the caregiver is. And we go out and just get fresh air and discuss things and to let them know you're not
Yeah.
alone here. And if you need more help in any way, you just let us know. And a lot of times they won't say anything. However, we can
Yeah.
tell that they're needing care, and we bring it
Yeah.
up to them,
Yeah.
and we'll have a meeting.
In your experience, what changes when a family says yes to hospice at the right time?
They are so thankful. They are like, oh, the help that you guys are providing, you make me feel comfortable and my family member or myself comfortable. I'm not so,
Yeah.
overwhelmed. You know, we understand how much you care and how you want to help us this whole time. And then we just provide it. And let's say something is going wrong. You can call us. They have something right at their fingertips. And look, I have people, when I meet with them, I don't sign consents. And not every hospice allows a person like me to work with them and meet them at the first time. I have no incentive
Yeah.
at all to bring anybody onto our service. Different hospice companies do have incentives, and a person that does a marketing position cannot meet with the families. However, since I have no incentive at all, I just want to
Yeah.
help people. And I truly am in this to help them due to the vast experiences I've had. And they'll continue to text me, or they'll call me, Heather, this is going on. And I say, okay, let me take care of this for you. And, or I'll just talk to them, or I'll go by the community and I'll see you when you're there, or I'll say, you need to call our office, the 24-hour line. And they know that they're not alone in this situation. And we are there and we have access to whatever they may need at that time, especially if it comes to pain or all of a sudden someone's having shortness of breath. We have medications that can help calm them. If they don't have oxygen or like a concentrator, maybe they need one now. And a lot of times we can just order it and it'll come within 4 hours. So it's all about building trust. And when you have that trust and they see how much you care, it is just, I don't know. It's weird. I just feel so fulfilled myself to be able to help them. We had a patient who was living in a skilled nursing facility in a huge RCFE. So there was independent living, and the wife was in the independent living. The patient had to go to the skilled nursing, and he wasn't getting better. And so they discussed placing him on hospice. We were with him for quite a while. This man was so wonderful, and he was so active. He sang in a choir. He knew so many people. His choir would come to visit him and sing to him. And even while, he's on hospice, I would go and I would sing to him. And even when he started not being conscious, you would see him smile and go like this to the songs I would sing. And I knew what he liked. Okay. And then his wife was there and we were taking care of her. Emotionally, she was not needing our service. And this happened around Christmas. So the patient did pass around Christmas time. Now, jump to last week. This in between Christmas last year and this last week, I would be in the assisted living. I would go to the skilled nursing. I would be walking through the community and I would see his wife and I would just say hello. Sometimes she goes, Heather, why don't you come up and have a cup of tea? And I would go to her apartment for a little while and I'd have a cup of tea. Then, it was so nice seeing her finally, getting out there and enjoying life. However, tragically, she fell. She slipped. She had to have hip surgery. The surgery went really well. However, for some reason, she had a major, major stroke not too long afterwards. And all of a sudden, she needed hospice. And we get this call from the daughter who lives back east, who was coming over the next day, saying, it's very sudden, but we need your service. And we told the facility we want to use you again. We really loved your team. And we were able to provide all of a sudden the care. We were all in shock. We all know this woman, and we could, sometimes life just happens that way. And so we were able to be there. And when the daughter was there, you could, when I was able to see her, you could tell she didn't have a long time. And the daughter came and arrived, and she was sitting there holding her hand. And when her father was transitioning, her mother would call the daughter and say, I don't know what to do. I feel helpless. How can I help him? And the daughter, who was so insightful, asked, well, what would you want to have happen? Well, I would want someone to be there and hold my hand. So that's what she did with her husband. And when I walked in, the daughter was doing the same thing, just being with her mother and holding her hand. They asked me to sing. And so I sang. And I sang at bedside. And, the hearing is the last thing to go. And we saw her kind of just move a little. I sang she asked for Gershwin. I sang your typical Gershwin standards. And we were all singing together, not just me, the daughter. And it was such a beautiful exchange and time. And one thing I forgot to say is, I can tell a family whatever they want to hear. I can, and say, you know what? Do this, do that. You should. I don't ever say you should, but there are many hospices out there. There are many options for families, and you have every right to choose your own hospice. However, I tell them the only thing that matters is your team, your nursing team, your team that comes over to your home. That's what's most important. It's the nurses, the social worker, and how you feel with that team. And it's very important that families understand that. And I've worked with Pathways for 2 years, and our team is phenomenal. And I trust every single person. I would have them care for my mother. However, my mom is in Contra Costa County, and I can't have them. But I would. And I've rarely worked for a company where I would say that. And this is one where I truthfully would say that. And the family realizes, just because of all the nurses, how compassionate they are and how much they are trying to help their family member be comfortable or be able to do what they want to do. We had a man who was like, he was able to walk. He was able to do everything. He goes, I'm going to continue to go to my home in Santa Cruz. So every few weeks, or they would go, and we would be able to have another company oversee them. And then they would come back, and usually he never needed anything. And then when it became the time for him where he was no longer able, he had also chosen to have the end of life option. And not everybody can qualify for that. And not everybody wants to do that. However, he had that discussion. He did qualify. I can explain a little more how that works. And when it was his time, he chose to do it. And we can't be there as our hospice to be there in the room or see it. However, he was there, he was able to do it. And then once he started the process and he had taken the medication, the nurse can then enter the room and be there through this transition. And, sometimes that's what families need. That's what a person who is very coherent wants, to be in charge and have control of their end of life. And in order to do the end of life, we don't provide the medication, our hospice. However, we support it. You need 2 physicians, outside physicians. So let's say you're in Kaiser and you're in palliative and you want to begin having, you want to be able to have the option to have end-of-life care. You need to meet with the palliative team, and then you meet with 2 physicians. Okay, 2 physicians will be in touch with you. If you have any cognitive issues going on, you cannot do end of life. That's very important to realize. If you're far along in your dementia process, you cannot have the end of life act. However, you meet with a physician, he asks you some questions, he discusses it with you, how it works, what it is, what it isn't, and then they discuss your case. Then 48 hours, you meet with them again later, and they will also discuss with you again and really say, is this something you want to do? And let's say you are still very, very serious about doing this. And it's hard. Then, they'll say, okay. And what happens next is they will order them medication. We have no involvement with that. But they would get their medications and they have them on hand. And if they want to do this later on, they can. So it's already in order and in place. The patient has to be able to take the medication themselves. No one can help them. So that's a key too. And sometimes people get the medications and decide, hey, I want this done. And then they decide, I don't want to do it. And that's fine too. They don't have to, even after they have the medications. So a person is totally in charge of what goes on during this whole hospice process. And we are with them from the beginning of the journey on hospice to the end when the last transition happens. And a lot of times people don't do the end of life act. And we're there to be with them and to work with the family to make sure that person is comfortable. We deal with the emotional issues that the caretakers are dealing with. It can be excruciatingly difficult to lose somebody. It is difficult. I know from sudden loss what that feels like, but a loss is a loss. And I know from my father being on hospice, who was on it for over 9 months, how that feels too. And loss is a loss and it's not fun. And you have to process your grief. Sometimes you're developing anticipatory grief. You know what's going to happen and you don't know how to control everything. That's where we come in to help with you and the family. And then after someone passes away, we're still there. Hospice is still there. We have bereavement. We have private sessions with counselors. We have groups that go on. We have groups that focus on the type of loss you've had. And we want to make that time, we're there for you still, for the family, or whoever that family is, whatever kind of family there is there, And it's extremely gratifying to know that this process that we don't want to face, you have the ability to have people at your side, whether you want them and we're right there, or whether you just know that they're there for you. we may be calling and saying, I know for a fact when someone calls you and they say, we want to check in with you and you're not answering the phone, and you leave a message, give us a call if you need something. You don't do that. They're not going to call you. So you call again and just not, you're not like harassing them. You just call and say, I'm just checking in again. And sometimes they'll pick up that phone. Sometimes they'll end up calling you, but they just need to know they have that support. I went through many different types of bereavement groups myself personally. My husband passed away. Tragically, we were in a car accident next to me. So I had a sudden loss, and that was 25 years ago almost this year. And I did different groups. I needed a lot. I went to a grief camp, quote unquote, where you're with people who are all going through some type of grief. I did art and grief, where you're expressing your pain through art, through where is your pain? And, I still remember, even though it's 20 plus years ago, the different active, quote unquote, things they had us do. And that was helping me. But it's a total process. We work to help you with that process. You never forget your loved one. But when you begin to think about it, you have happiness. And it's true that sometimes you will get sad again. But when you are sad and you are depressed, it doesn't last that long. Sometimes it can be very intense. But other times you're like, and then within hours or within the next day, you're back to yourself again. And you need to take the time to be able to process whatever you're dealing with. So we're there afterwards. We have, if we don't have what you're needing, we can find it for you and help you that way. Yeah. So it's really important. We're there through it all.
Okay. I have a question related to funding hospice care. What does Medicare or insurance typically cover when it comes to hospice care?
It's covered hospice care through Medicare and usually through other insurances. Is covered 100%. I can't believe I forgot to mention that earlier. That is such a great question. Thank you. When families also find out, hey, this is covered. You don't have to worry about any of this. What what we provide for you, you get through Medicare. You've worked hard to get this one benefit, and we're allowed to use it. And that is very, very relieving to a lot of people. Okay. People think we're there all the time, and we're not. So that's when we have to find and make sure that family member or the patient themselves has the proper care. And sometimes that's when home care agencies come in or, family members who can begin to help.
What's your advice for adult children advocating for their parents for hospice care, but facing pushback from other family members?
Been there, done that. Okay. Sure. Well, it's not easy. You have to develop the courage to be asking with your family members. Sometimes you need someone else to help you. I personally, I work in hospice, but can I tell you, it doesn't mean I'm in my family's eyes at some point, that didn't mean anything. You don't know what you're talking about. You want to give up. And even though I say no, it's just the opposite. And then once it's, I was lucky enough that they finally agreed. Even though I was in charge of healthcare, I don't want to ruin the whole entire family dynamics. So we discussed it. Sometimes families need an outside source to come in. There are people that help with discussing issues like this. And we that's out there. And actually, there's so many different types of people who help families. Like there are care managers out there that have been working with the family, and or all of a sudden they need a care manager to help them with this process, and they can help them. There are people who deal with conflicts specifically within families and help them work through it as like an objective navigator. So there's lots of ways to get help. Many people, I know about it because I've worked in the industry. And one of the things I really feel is important is to educate. Not just when they need hospice, but prior. I personally, since I'm in that sandwich generation, let everybody know. I don't even care where they live. If things are going on and you need help or you feel like you need to talk about something, just call me. I will get you to the right place. If I don't have the answer, I know who does. It doesn't have to be that they need hospice. Heck, it could be way before, and not everybody needs hospice. You just need to educate. And that's also educating physicians out there and letting them know the type of services that people may need in the future.
Okay. Here's one of my last questions. What should families be asking before choosing a hospice provider?
Because it's true. So many different companies are out there. There's a lot. I personally, that's really hard because I work, for a hospice company. I don't want to sit there and, if people have a right to talk with however many hospices they want and discuss what is there and what are our differentiators, if we have differentiators. And I think a lot has to do with the person you're meeting with and seeing or talking to. If you feel that this person knows what they're talking about and makes me feel okay and to help me with this horrible process, that's the one I would go to. And also, let me just say, you get a hospice company and you know what? It's not working out. You don't, while you're on the service, you have the right to transfer to a different company and ask to be transferred. And so you're in charge.
Good to know.
Good
to know. I didn't know that. So thank you very much. Are there any final remarks that you want to make? Anything I should have asked you that I didn't ask yet?
You covered a lot and you asked me many different questions, and then it would have me go to a different tangent, and I talk things. I think there is nothing more that you should have asked. I just like to let people know that this is something we are out there to help you with. And using and utilizing hospice can be the most wonderful thing for you and your family members. And if you're intimidated, to ask questions. Talk to us. We don't do anything to hinder a situation at all. It's just the opposite. And if a patient starts to get better, and they're like a baseline, they may not qualify for hospice anymore. At that point, we transition them either to being off hospice, and if they need home health, they start home health, or we have a plan in place. It's not like, oh, you no longer qualify and the next day you're off. There's a process. And then if things change, you come back. So hospice is huge. And a lot of times I say comfort care. And then I bring in the hospice word later in the conversation.
Good. Heather, thank you so much for joining me today. That was one of the most heartfelt and impactful conversations we've had on the podcast so far. You shared so many important truths, from what hospice really is to why early planning can be a gift, not just for the senior, but the entire family. For any of our listeners that want to connect with you to ask more about hospice care and pathways, how can our listeners connect with you?
Well, it's very simple. You can go to our website, pathwayshealth.org. You can call me. I have people call me all the time on my personal cell for work, my work cell, and I can give out that number. And that's 650-669-9161. Or you call Pathways Hospice, our number, and they will lead you in the right direction. They will have someone get on that phone, and when whoever answers that phone will say, hold on, and then they'll connect you with what you're looking for.
Excellent.
And usually if it's in Alameda County, someone will connect the call to me directly while they're on the phone. So it is a passion. I have no idea why. I mean, I get so much out of it, and it's solely aspired to help these people. And, it's what we do and what I do. And I'm honored to help families that they even choose our service. It's an honor to be with them.
No, your passion shows.
So-
I could feel it. So yeah, I definitely feel it.
Yeah, I thank you so much for having me speak to you today.
Absolutely. Hey, and for those of you watching or listening, if your loved one is considering senior living and you need to figure out what to do with their home, let's talk. Schedule a free consultation with me by clicking on the Calendly link located in the video description box on this episode on YouTube. You can learn more about my services at www.simplifyseniortransitions.com. Have a quick question, DM me on Instagram at SoldByDale. If you found this interview helpful, please make sure to like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who might need this information. Thanks for tuning in. Heather, thanks again for being on the episode. And
Thank
I'll
you.
see you on the next episode of the Simplify Senior Transitions podcast.